The Galactic Institute of Xenology gathered the smartest minds in the galaxy. Kryther strategists who had never lost a battle. Xylos logicians who had never encountered a problem they could not solve. Vel historians who remembered everything that had ever happened. Ority theorists who could adapt any idea to any situation. They were the best, the brightest, the most intelligent beings in the galaxy. Their mission was simple. Study the humans. Understand their logic. For millions of years, every species had followed predictable patterns. Self-interest, survival, efficiency. These were the laws of logic, the rules of life, the way of the galaxy. Kryther fought for power. Xylos sought knowledge. Vel preserved the past. Ority adapted to survive. Every action had a reason. Every decision had a purpose. Every behavior made sense. Then they studied humans. The scientists watched hours of human behavior. They saw humans help strangers. Not friends. Not family. People they had never met. People who could never repay them. People who had nothing to offer. The scientists were confused. This is not logical, they said. Helping strangers provides no benefit. It wastes resources. It risks safety. It makes no sense. They saw humans give away food when they were hungry. They had little. They gave to those who had less. The scientists were baffled. This is not efficient, they said. Food is energy. Energy is survival. Giving away food reduces your chance of survival. This is madness. They saw humans run toward danger when others ran away. Fires, floods, accidents. Humans rushed in. They saved strangers. They risked their lives. The scientists were stunned. This is not survival, they said. Running away is the logical response. Running toward danger is death. Why do they do this? The scientists held a conference. They gathered in a grand hall. Representatives from 100 species sat in rows. The mood was tense. The questions were urgent. We have studied thousands of species, said the lead scientist. Every species follows predictable patterns. Self-interest, survival, efficiency. Every action has a logical explanation. But humans break every rule. They do things that make no sense. They help strangers. They give away food. They run toward danger. We cannot explain it. We cannot understand it. We cannot predict it. The hall was silent. A human woman stood up. She was not invited. She was not a scientist. She was a farmer. Her name was Elena. Her hands were rough. Her hair was white. Her eyes were kind. She had been listening from the back of the hall. Now she spoke. You are confused because you are looking at human logic with your logic, she said. You measure everything by self-interest, survival, efficiency. But humans measure differently. We measure by connection, by community, by love. The scientists stared at her. Love, they said. Love is not logical. Love is not efficient. Love is not survival. Elena smiled. That is what you believe. That is what the galaxy has believed for millions of years. But look at the evidence. Humans who help strangers are helped in return. Not always. Not immediately. But eventually. Humans who give away food create bonds of trust. When they are hungry, others feed them. Humans who run toward danger become heroes. Their communities protect them, support them, save them. She paused. She looked around the hall. Your logic is about the individual. My logic is about the group. You calculate short-term gain. We calculate long-term survival. You think about yourself. We think about everyone. That is human logic. It is not madness. It is wisdom. It just works on a different timescale. The scientists were silent. They had never considered this. They had never thought about long-term survival. They had never calculated the value of trust, the power of community, the strength of love. But self-interest is the foundation of logic, said a Xylos scientist. Every action is motivated by self-interest. That is the law. Elena shook her head. That is your law, not ours. We are motivated by something else. We are motivated by connection. We help others because we want to be connected. We give because we want to receive. We love because we want to be loved. That is not self-interest. It is mutual interest. It is shared interest. It is human interest. The scientists did not understand, but they could not argue with the evidence. Humans had survived, thrived, spread across their planet, reached for the stars. Their illogical behavior had worked. It had kept them alive. It had made them strong. It had made them human. We have a question, said the lead scientist. If your logic is so different, how do we study it? How do we measure it? How do we understand it? Elena thought for a moment. She remembered her grandmother. Her grandmother had taught her to share, to help, to love. Her grandmother had not used logic. She had used heart. You cannot study it with your methods, Elena said. You cannot measure it with your tools. You cannot understand it with your minds. You have to feel it. You have to live it. You have to share bread with a stranger. You have to give food to the hungry. You have to run toward a fire. That is how you learn human logic. Not by thinking, by doing. Not by analyzing, by feeling. Not by understanding, by loving. The scientists were silent. They did not know what to say. They had spent their lives thinking, analyzing, understanding. They had never felt, never done, never loved. They did not know how. Teach us, said the lead scientist. Elena smiled. Come to Earth. Sit in my garden. Eat my bread. Drink my tea. I will teach you. Not in a classroom. Not with books. With life. With love. With human logic. It will take time. It will take patience. But you can learn. Anyone can learn. Even scientists. Even the smartest minds in the galaxy. The scientists came to Earth. They sat in Elena's garden. They ate her bread. They drank her tea. They talked about their families. They listened to her stories. They began to understand. Not with their minds. With their hearts. They began to feel. To do. To love. They began to learn human logic. And human logic, they discovered, was not madness. It was wisdom. The highest wisdom. The only wisdom that had ever saved anyone. The only wisdom that ever would. The only logic that mattered. The only logic that was human. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the great confusion. And it was only the beginning. The scientists ran an experiment. They wanted to test human logic. They had seen humans share food, give away resources, help strangers. The scientists did not understand. Sharing was inefficient. Giving away resources was wasteful. Helping strangers was dangerous. Their models said so. Their calculations said so. Their logic said so. But the humans kept sharing, kept giving, kept helping. The scientists needed proof. So they designed an experiment. They took 2 groups of humans, 20 people in each group. They gave each group a limited amount of food. Enough for 1 week. No more. No less. The first group was told to keep the food for themselves. Hoard it. Protect it. Do not share. That was logical. That was efficient. That was survival. The second group was told to share the food with strangers. Not with each other. With strangers. People they had never met. People who could not repay them. People who had nothing to offer. That was illogical. That was inefficient. That was madness. The scientists watched. They recorded everything. They waited. The first group hoarded their food. They kept it in a locked room. They guarded it day and night. They ate well. 3 meals a day. Plenty of calories. Plenty of energy. They were satisfied. Efficient. Logical. The second group shared their food. They gave loaves of bread to strangers. Bowls of soup. Cups of tea. They ate less. 1 meal a day. Sometimes less. They were hungry. Often hungry. But they kept sharing. Kept giving. Kept helping. The first week passed. The first group still had food. They rationed carefully. They would last another few days. The second group had no food left. They had given it all away. The scientists expected them to starve, to regret their choices, to learn that sharing was foolish. Then something unexpected happened. Strangers came to the second group. Not all at once. One here, one there. They brought food, bread, vegetables, fruit, meat. They said, "You helped us when we were hungry. Now we help you." The second group ate. They were not hungry anymore. More strangers came. They brought more food. The second group shared that food too. With new strangers. With the first group. With anyone who was hungry. The food kept coming. It did not run out. The second group never starved. The first group ran out of food after 10 days. They were hungry. They asked the second group for help. The second group shared. They gave bread to the people who had hoarded their food, who had refused to share, who had called them foolish. The scientists were stunned. "Why are you helping them?" they asked. "They did not help you. They hoarded their food. They let you starve. They called you fools. Why are you sharing with them?" A human woman shrugged. Her name was Elena. She was old. Her hair was white. Her hands were rough. She had given away most of her food. She was thin. But she was smiling. Because they are hungry, she said. That is enough. We do not need a reason. We do not need repayment. We do not need gratitude. They are hungry. We have food. We share. That is what we do. That is who we are. The scientists were silent. They had never seen anything like this. No other species shared with strangers. No other species gave without expecting return. No other species helped enemies. But humans did. And they survived. They thrived. They never starved. We do not understand, said the lead scientist. Sharing is inefficient. It wastes resources. It reduces your chance of survival. Our models predicted that the second group would starve. But they did not. They were fed by strangers. Strangers they had helped. Strangers who remembered their kindness. How is this possible? How does sharing lead to survival? Elena thought for a moment. She remembered her grandmother. Her grandmother had taught her to share. Not because it was efficient. Because it was kind. Not because it helped her survive. Because it helped everyone survive. You take care of others, she said. Others take care of you. That is human logic. It is not about the individual. It is about the group. When you share, you build trust. You build community. You build a network of people who will help you when you need it. Not because they have to. Because they want to. Because you help them. Because you are connected. Because you are human. The scientists wrote this down. Human logic. Take care of others, others take care of you. It was not logical by their standards. It was not efficient. It was not self-interested. But it worked. It kept humans alive. It made them strong. It made them human. The experiment ended. The first group had learned nothing. They still hoarded. Still guarded. Still feared. The second group had learned everything. They shared. They gave. They helped. They were not rich. Not powerful. Not famous. But they were never hungry. They were never alone. They were never without hope. The scientists returned to the institute. They wrote a new chapter in their textbooks. The first paradox: humans give away their food, and it comes back tenfold. This is not logical. But it is human. And it works. The galaxy was confused. But the galaxy was learning. Sharing was not weakness. It was strength. Giving was not loss. It was investment. Helping was not danger. It was safety. That was human logic. The logic of connection. The logic of community. The logic of love. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand. It would take time. There would be mistakes. But they would learn. They would grow. They would share. They would become human. Not in body. In heart. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the first paradox. And it was only the beginning. The scientists ran another experiment. They had seen humans share food. Give away resources. Help strangers. They did not understand. Sharing was inefficient. Giving was wasteful. Helping was dangerous. But the humans kept doing it. And they kept surviving. The scientists needed more proof. So they designed a new experiment. This time, they wanted to test how humans responded to danger. They created a dangerous situation. A fire. A building with smoke and flames. They placed a group of people inside. Not humans. Other species. Kryther. Xylos. Vel. Orati. They told them to wait. Then they set the fire. The other species ran away. That was logical. Self-preservation. Survival. They did not look back. They did not help anyone else. They just ran. The scientists expected humans to do the same. Run away. Save themselves. That was logical. That was efficient. That was what every species did. The humans did not run away. Some ran toward the fire. Not all. Not the ones who were trapped. The ones who were outside. Safe. They saw the fire. They heard the screams. They ran inside. The scientists were stunned. Stop, they shouted. You will die. This is illogical. The humans did not stop. They ran into the burning building. They were firefighters. Volunteers. Ordinary people who decided to help. They carried people out. Children. Old people. Strangers. They did not ask for payment. Did not ask for thanks. Did not ask for anything. They just helped. The scientists watched. They expected the humans to die. To be consumed by the flames. To learn that helping was dangerous. The humans did not die. They saved others. They carried the last person out just before the building collapsed. They were burned. Some were injured. But they were alive. They were heroes. The scientists were confused. Running toward danger is illogical, they said. It increases your chance of death. It reduces your chance of survival. It makes no sense. But you lived. You saved others. How? A human firefighter looked at them. His name was Kale. His hands were burned. His face was tired. His eyes were bright. We take care of each other, he said. When you help others, they help you. That is human logic. The scientists did not understand. But you ran into a fire. You risked your life for strangers. That is not taking care of yourself. That is sacrificing yourself. How does that make you safer? Kale thought for a moment. He remembered his father. His father had been a firefighter too. He had died saving a child. Kale had been angry at first. Angry at his father for leaving. Angry at the world for being unfair. But then he saw the child. The child had grown up. Become a doctor. Saved hundreds of lives. Kale understood. His father had not died for nothing. He had died for something. He had died for connection. For community. For love. When I run into a fire, Kale said, I am not just saving the people inside. I am building a community. A community that will help me when I need it. A community that will protect my family. A community that will remember my sacrifice. I am not safer today, but I am safer tomorrow. Because tomorrow, someone will run into a fire for me. The scientists wrote this down. Human logic, run toward danger today to be safer tomorrow. It was not logical by their standards. It was not efficient. It was not self-interested. But it worked. Humans who helped others were helped in return. Humans who risked their lives were honored. Protected. Supported. Their communities kept them safe. The scientists ran more experiments. They found the same pattern everywhere. Humans who helped strangers were less likely to die. Humans who gave away food were less likely to starve. Humans who ran toward danger were less likely to be harmed. It was a paradox. A contradiction. A mystery. Why does this work? The scientists asked. A human woman answered. Her name was Elena. She was old. Her hair was white. Her hands were rough. She had spent her life helping others. She had never been rich. Never been powerful. Never been famous. But she had never been alone. Never been hungry. Never been without hope. Because you cannot survive alone, she said. No one can. Not humans. Not Kryther. Not Xylos. Not Vel. Not Ority. Everyone needs help. Everyone needs community. Everyone needs love. When you help others, you build that community. You earn that love. You create that safety. It is not logical in the short term, but it is logical in the long term. It is human logic, and it works. The scientists returned to the institute. They wrote a new chapter in their textbooks. The second paradox: humans run toward danger and become safer. This is not logical, but it is human, and it works. The galaxy was confused. The galaxy was learning. Helping was not weakness. It was strength. Risking was not death. It was life. Running toward danger was not foolish. It was wise. That was human logic. The logic of community. The logic of connection. The logic of love. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand. It would take time. There would be mistakes. But they would learn. They would grow. They would help. They would become human. Not in body. In heart. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the second paradox. And it was only the beginning. The scientists ran a final experiment. They had seen humans share food and run toward danger. They had seen the paradoxes. The illogical behaviors that somehow led to survival. They did not understand. But they wanted to learn more. So they designed a final test. The most difficult test. The test of endurance. The test of will. The test of refusing to give up. They put humans in impossible situations. Surrounded by enemies. Outnumbered 100 to 1. Outgunned with primitive weapons. No chance of victory. No hope of rescue. No possibility of escape. Every other species would have surrendered. That was logical. That was efficient. That was survival. The scientists expected humans to surrender too. The humans did not surrender. They fought. Not because they thought they could win. They knew they could not. They fought because refusing to fight was not an option. They fought because giving up was not in their nature. They fought because surrender was worse than death. The scientists watched. They expected the humans to be destroyed quickly. The humans were not destroyed. They lasted longer than any species had a right to. They used tactics that made no sense. They ambushed when they should have retreated. They attacked when they should have hidden. They stood their ground when they should have run. The enemy grew frustrated. They had expected an easy victory, a quick surrender, a simple conquest. But the humans refused to break. refused to bend, refused to give up. The enemy grew tired. Their supplies ran low. Their morale dropped. Their soldiers began to question. Why are we still fighting? They asked. These humans cannot win. They must know they cannot win. Why do they not surrender? The humans heard this question. They laughed. Not a cruel laugh. A tired laugh. A human laugh. We do not fight to win, they said. We fight because giving up is not an option. Winning is not the point. The point is to keep fighting. To keep resisting. To keep being human. The scientists were stunned. The experiment lasted weeks. Then months. The humans kept fighting. The enemy kept losing soldiers. Not to human weapons. To human stubbornness. To human refusal to quit. The enemy grew weary. They had conquered many worlds. They had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that would not break. Would not bend. Would not surrender. Finally, the enemy gave up. They left. They went to conquer easier worlds. Worlds where the inhabitants surrendered when defeat was certain. Worlds where logic ruled. Worlds where humans did not live. The scientists gathered around the human survivors. There were not many left. The fighting had been brutal. But those who remained were unbowed. Unbroken. Unbeaten. Refusing to give up is illogical, the scientists said. It wastes resources. It risks lives. It prolongs suffering. Every calculation says you should have surrendered. But you did not. And you survived. Your enemies gave up. They left. You won. How? A human soldier looked at them. His name was Kale. He was young. His face was scarred. His eyes were tired. But they were not defeated. We did not win, he said. We just did not lose. There is a difference. Winning is about defeating your enemy. Not losing is about refusing to be defeated. We cannot defeat the Vorthan. They are too strong. Too many. Too powerful. But we can refuse to be defeated. We can keep fighting. Keep resisting. Keep being human. Eventually they will grow tired. They will grow frustrated. They will grow bored. They will leave. Not because we defeated them. Because they could not defeat us. The scientists wrote this down. Human logic, refusing to give up, makes you unbeatable. It was not logical by their standards. It was not efficient. It was not strategic. But it worked. Humans who refused to surrender outlasted their enemies. Survived against impossible odds. Won wars they should have lost. Why does this work? The scientists asked. Kale thought for a moment. He remembered his grandfather. His grandfather had fought in a war against a much stronger enemy. Everyone said the war was hopeless. Everyone said surrender was the only option. His grandfather refused. He kept fighting. Not because he thought he could win. Because he refused to accept defeat. Winning is about strength, Kale said. Not losing is about will. Strength can be overcome. Numbers can be beaten. Technology can be matched. But will is different. Will cannot be overcome. Cannot be beaten. Cannot be matched. Will just keeps going. Keeps fighting. Keeps refusing to give up. That is human logic. That is why we are unbeatable. Not because we are strong. Because we will not stop. The scientists returned to the institute. They wrote a new chapter in their textbooks. The third paradox: humans refuse to give up and become unbeatable. This is not logical. But it is human. And it works. The galaxy was confused. The galaxy was learning. Surrender was not the only option. Defeat was not the end. Giving up was not required. Humans had shown them another way. A way of will. A way of stubbornness. A way of refusing to accept defeat. That was human logic. The logic of persistence. The logic of endurance. The logic of hope. And the galaxy was only beginning to understand. It would take time. There would be mistakes. But they would learn. They would grow. They would refuse to give up. They would become human. Not in body. In heart. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the third paradox. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of a new understanding. The beginning of a new way. The beginning of human logic. The logic that saved. The logic that endured. The logic that was human. And the galaxy would never be the same. It was the beginning of something new. Something strange. Something human. Something that refused to give up. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the third paradox. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of the end of the old ways. The beginning of the rise of human logic. The logic of sharing. The logic of helping. The logic of refusing to give up. The logic that works. The logic that saves. The logic that is human. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the third paradox. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of a new galaxy. A galaxy of human logic. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the third paradox. And it was only the beginning. The scientists returned to the institute. They carried boxes of notes, hard drives of recordings, years of observations. They had studied humans. They had watched them share food when hungry, run toward danger when others ran away, refuse to give up when defeat was certain. They had seen the paradoxes, the illogical behaviors that somehow led to survival. They had been confused. Now they were ready to write. They wrote a new book. They called it Human Logic, doing the opposite of what makes sense. It was not a long book. Human logic was simple, confusing, but simple. The book had 3 chapters: sharing, helping, persistence. Each chapter explained the paradox: why sharing led to survival, why helping led to safety, why refusing to give up led to victory. The explanations were not logical, not by galactic standards, but they were human, and they worked. The book spread across the galaxy. Species read it: Crither, Xylos, Vel, Ority, dozens of others. They were confused at first. Sharing was inefficient. Helping was dangerous. Persistence was foolish. That was what they had been taught. That was what they believed. That was what their logic said. But the evidence was clear. Humans who shared survived. Humans who helped thrived. Humans who persisted won. The galaxy began to understand. Sharing was not inefficient. It was investment. When you shared, you built trust. You built community. You built a network of people who would help you when you needed it. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to. Because you had helped them. Because you were connected. Helping was not weakness. It was strength. When you helped, you became a hero. Your community honored you, protected you, supported you. You were not weaker for helping. You were stronger. Because you had people who would help you back. Because you were not alone. Refusing to give up was not foolish. It was power. When you refused to accept defeat, you outlasted your enemies. They grew tired, frustrated, bored. They left. Not because you defeated them. Because they could not defeat you. Your will was stronger than their weapons. Your persistence was stronger than their armies. Your refusal to quit was unbeatable. The galaxy changed. Not overnight. Slowly. Species began to share. Crither shared food with strangers. Xylos shared knowledge with rivals. Vel shared memories with the young. Ority shared resources with the poor. At first, it was hard. Their logic told them to hoard, to protect, to keep. But they remembered the humans. They remembered the paradox. Sharing was not loss. It was gain. Their communities grew stronger. Their bonds grew deeper. Their survival grew more certain. Species began to help. Crither ran toward danger. Xylos volunteered in hospitals. Vel mentored the lost. Ority rebuilt broken homes. At first, it was scary. Their logic told them to run away, to protect themselves, to stay safe. But they remembered the humans. They remembered the paradox. Helping was not danger. It was safety. Their communities honored them, protected them, supported them. They were not alone. Species began to persist. Crither refused to surrender. Xylos refused to give up on hard problems. Vel refused to let their history be forgotten. Ority refused to abandon their traditions. At first, it was exhausting. Their logic told them to quit, to accept defeat, to move on. But they remembered the humans. They remembered the paradox. Persistence was not foolish. It was power. Their enemies grew tired. Their problems grew solvable. Their hopes grew real. The final scene takes place at the Galactic Institute of Xenology. The building was old, grand, full of history. For millions of years, it had been the center of galactic knowledge. Now it had something new. A plaque on the wall. Not large. Not fancy. Simple. Wooden. Humble. The smartest minds were confused. Then they saw human logic. Now they are wise. A young scientist stood before the plaque. She was Ority. Young. Curious. She had grown up hearing about humans. Their strange logic. Their illogical behaviors. Their paradoxical survival. She had read the book. She had studied the evidence. She wanted to understand. She turned to an old mentor. He was Vel. He had been there at the beginning. He had watched the humans share food, run toward fire, refuse to give up. He had been confused. Then he had understood. He had learned human logic. What is human logic? the young scientist asked. The old mentor smiled. He remembered the first time he saw a human share food with a stranger. The stranger had nothing to offer. No payment. No favor. No future help. Just hunger. The human gave anyway. Because the stranger was hungry. That was enough. Human logic is doing the opposite of what makes sense, he said. When logic says hoard, humans share. When logic says run, humans help. When logic says quit, humans persist. And it works. That is the paradox. That is human. That is the only logic that has ever saved anyone. The young scientist thought about this. It was confusing. It was paradoxical. It was human. She looked at the plaque again. The smartest minds were confused. Then they saw human logic. Now they are wise. She was not wise yet, but she was learning. How do I learn human logic? She asked. The old mentor laughed. You cannot learn it from a book. You cannot learn it from a lecture. You cannot learn it from a plaque. You learn it by doing. You share your food. You help a stranger. You refuse to give up when things are hard. That is how you learn human logic. Not by thinking, by living. The young scientist nodded. She left the institute. She went to find someone who was hungry. Someone who needed help. Someone who had given up. She would share. She would help. She would persist. She would learn human logic. Not because it made sense. Because it worked. Because it was human. Because it was the only logic that had ever saved anyone. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the new understanding. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of a new galaxy. A galaxy of human logic. A galaxy of sharing. Helping. Persisting. A galaxy of hope. And that was enough. That was everything. That was human. That was the new understanding. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of wisdom. The beginning of human logic. The beginning of everything. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the new understanding. And it was only the beginning. The beginning of hope. The beginning of love. The beginning of human. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the new understanding. And it was only the beginning.